New York Attorney General Letitia James filed a lawsuit Wednesday against former President Trump and his company. James is accusing Trump of fraud and lying about the value of his assets. CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa reports.
Claiming you have money that you do not have does not amount to the art of the deal. It's the art of the steal.
The sweeping lawsuit unveiled today by New York State Attorney General accuses the former president and his children of lying for more than a decade about his wealth and his company.
Donald Trump falsely inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself and to cheat the system, thereby cheating all of us.
In a more than 200-page civil lawsuit, Letitia James said Trump inflated his value by billions, defrauding insurers and lenders and violating state law, and potentially federal laws, too. Also named as key players, 3 of Trump's adult children, Ivanka, Eric, and Don Jr., plus 2 former executives.
Hey guys, Adam is speaking. So this is happening. An electrical fire broke out in the Capitol tunnels, injuring 2 police officers. But it was overshadowed by the political chaos happening simultaneously as Democrats called for Trump's resignation, and Trump responded by suggesting 6 of them should be executed.
President Trump facing outrage from Democrats tonight after demanding the arrest of a half-dozen Democratic lawmakers, suggesting they be executed for posting this video.
We want to speak directly to members of the military.
Where 6 Democrats, all with national security backgrounds, urge members of the military to disobey any illegal orders from President Trump.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
Referring to the video, President Trump writing, seditious behavior from traitors, lock them up, and seditious behavior punishable by death.
Let me take you inside what actually happened in those tunnels, because the details matter. The underground trolley system that connects the House office buildings to the Capitol is one of those things most Americans never think about. A small train that shuttles legislators and staff back and forth so they don't have to walk outside in bad weather. But beneath that mundane function is a web of electrical systems, ventilation shafts, and confined spaces that become deadly when something goes wrong.
D.C. Fire and Emergency Medical Services are investigating what they say is a small electrical fire in the tunnel connecting the Rayburn House building to the U.S. Capitol. The fire on the trolley is now believed to be extinguished, and at the time, there is 1 known patient who suffered a minor injury. But again, you are looking at live shots right outside of the U.S. Capitol building. You see all those emergency first responder vehicles, firefighters now walking back and forth into the Capitol. You see them there as we zoom out here. Also, looks like a ladder is deployed up to at least one of the roofs of the Capitol building. There is a large presence. That fire.
An electrical malfunction, probably aging equipment that hadn't been replaced when it should have been, sparked a fire that quickly filled the tunnels with smoke. In an open space, that smoke would have dissipated. But in the confined underground passages, it had nowhere to go. It billowed and thickened, creeping into the buildings above, triggering alarms and evacuations. 2 officers stayed behind to help clear the area, doing their jobs while everyone else ran to safety. They paid for that decision with trips to the hospital, their lungs seared by smoke inhalation. They will recover. The fire was contained, the damage was minimal, but the image of firefighters descending into the Capitol tunnels while lawmakers evacuated above ground was one of those moments that freeze in the public imagination. It was January 6th without the insurrection. It was 9/11 without the planes. It was a reminder that the institutions of American government are physical places, staffed by real people, vulnerable to the same failures that afflict any aging infrastructure. And it was a metaphor that no novelist could have written better, because the smoke in the tunnels was not the only fire consuming Washington. Just days before the fire broke out, 6 Democratic members of Congress had done something that would have been unthinkable in any previous administration. They recorded a video addressed to the United States military, not a campaign ad, not a fundraising appeal, a direct message to service members about their duty under the Constitution. They told them that they have sworn an oath to support and defend the Constitution, not to follow orders from any individual, not even the president.
Congressman Chris Deluzio joined 5 other Democratic lawmakers, all of them military or intelligence community veterans, to urge current officials to disobey illegal orders. Michigan Senator Alyssa Slotkin, a former CIA analyst, posted the video. The lawmakers say threats to the Constitution aren't just coming from abroad.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
We know this is hard and that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
The Army,
Our Navy,
the Air Force,
Your vigilance is critical.
and know that we have your back.
Because now, more than ever,
The American people need you. We need you to stand up for our laws.
our Constitution,
And who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
They reminded them that military law requires them to refuse unlawful orders, that the Uniform Code of Military Justice has been clear on this for generations. They warned them that there might come a time when they are ordered to do something that violates the Constitution, violates federal law, violates international treaties, and that when that time comes, their duty is to say no. They did not mention Trump by name. They did not need to. Everyone who watched the video knew exactly which orders they were talking about. The mass deportations that federal judges had already ruled violated court orders. The threats to use the military for domestic law enforcement in ways that would shred posse comitatus. The suggestions that the armed forces should be turned into a deportation force, rounding up millions of people without warrants, without due process, without any of the constitutional protections that military members have sworn to defend. The video was careful, measured, grounded in decades of military ethics and legal precedent. It was also a warning shot fired directly at the White House, a signal that members of Congress were so concerned about what Trump might order the military to do that they felt compelled to publicly remind service members of their legal obligations before those orders ever came. Trump's response came fast, and it came with the full force of his authoritarian instincts. He went on social media and declared that what these Democrats had done should be punishable by death. He did not say they should be investigated. He did not say they should be censured or impeached or even criticized. He said they should be executed. For reminding military personnel that their oath is to the Constitution, not to the president, 6 members of Congress should face capital punishment. Let that land. The President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, the man who controls the most powerful military in human history, publicly called for the execution of his political opponents. Not in a whisper, not in a private conversation that someone leaked, on social media for the world to see. This was not hyperbole from a rally crowd. This was not a joke that landed wrong. This was a sitting president, responding to criticism, saying that the people who criticized him should be killed. And the fact that this barely registered as a scandal, that it was absorbed into the daily churn of outrage and normalized within hours, tells you everything about how far the country has fallen. A president threatening to execute members of Congress should be the only story anyone is talking about. Instead, it was just another day. The calls for Trump to resign that have been building for weeks reached a new intensity in the aftermath of both the fire and the execution comments. Democrats have been demanding his removal since the first day of his second term, but now Republicans are starting to say it too. Quietly, in some cases, through back channels and off-the-record conversations. But publicly, audibly, undeniably, there are Republicans in competitive districts who have started telling reporters that Trump's behavior has become so extreme, so destructive, so fundamentally incompatible with the office he holds, that he needs to step aside. They are not saying impeach him. They are not saying invoke the 25th Amendment. They are saying he should do the right thing, the thing that Richard Nixon did when the walls closed in around him, and resign for the good of the country. They are saying it because they see the polls showing his approval rating cratering, even among Republicans. They are saying it because they see the scandals piling up, the legal walls closing in, the cabinet resignations and the contempt findings and the bank records and the Epstein files. They are saying it because they know that if they are tied to Trump in 2026, they will lose. And more than that, some of them are saying it because they genuinely believe he is dangerous, because they watched him call for the execution of members of Congress and realized that the man they have been defending is not a president. He is a threat. The fire in the Capitol tunnels was an accident, an electrical malfunction in aging infrastructure. It was not caused by politics. It was not a message from the universe. But it became a symbol anyway, because symbols do not care about intent. They care about what people see. And what people saw was smoke rising from the heart of American government at the same moment that the heart of American government was tearing itself apart. They saw firefighters rushing into the underground passages while lawmakers rushed to podiums to demand the president's resignation. They saw 2 police officers hospitalized for doing their jobs, while 6 members of Congress faced death threats for doing theirs. They saw a physical fire extinguished by emergency crews, while a political fire raged on, fueled by a president who seems to believe that the only way to govern is to set everything around him ablaze. The broader context of this moment is not just the fire and not just the execution comments. It is the accumulation of everything that has come before. The classified documents investigation that will not die, the contempt proceedings against Trump officials who defied court orders, the mass resignations at the Justice Department from career officials who could no longer stomach the corruption, the FBI lawsuits against Kash Patel over illegal firings, the courtroom meltdowns where Trump screams at judges, the House Republican chaos that has made the majority barely functional, the endless, grinding, exhausting crisis that has become the normal state of American government. Each of these things on its own might be survivable, but together, they create a picture of a presidency spiraling out of control, a man at the center of it all who seems to have no understanding of the limits of his power, no respect for the institutions he is supposed to lead, and no willingness to stop before he burns everything down. And now he has called for the execution of members of Congress, and now there is literal smoke rising from the Capitol. And now people are asking openly in public whether the country can survive another year and a half of this. The Democratic lawmakers who made that video knew exactly what they were doing. They knew it would provoke Trump. They knew he would respond with rage. They did it anyway because they calculated that the risk of not speaking was greater than the risk of speaking. If Trump ever does issue orders that cross the line into clear illegality, if he orders the military to do something that violates the Constitution, they wanted there to be a record. They wanted military personnel to have heard before the crisis came that they have a duty to refuse. They wanted to create a paper trail that future historians and prosecutors could point to and say, they warned us, they told us what was coming, and they were willing to face the president's wrath to do it. Trump's response, calling for their execution, proved them right, because a president who believes his political opponents should be killed for telling the military to follow the law is a president who does not believe in law. A president who views any check on his authority as treason is a president who views himself as above checks. A president who responds to a video about constitutional duty with a demand for capital punishment is a president who has already decided that the Constitution is whatever he says it is. The Republican Party is fracturing under the weight of all of this. The Speaker of the House is hanging on by a thread, unable to satisfy both the MAGA base that wants total war and the moderates who want to govern. The conference is barely functional, with members threatening to resign, threatening to vacate the chair, threatening to bring the whole thing down because they cannot agree on whether to keep defending a president who calls for the execution of his enemies. Some of them have started to do the math. They have looked at the polls showing Trump's approval at historic lows. They have looked at the districts where Republicans are bleeding support, because voters are exhausted by the chaos. They have looked at the legal cases that are about to put Trump's associates in prison and Trump himself under indictment. And they have started to wonder whether the man they have been defending is worth the cost. For now, most of them are still holding, but the cracks are showing. And the fire in the Capitol, both literal and metaphorical, is making those cracks wider. What comes next is not clear. Trump will not resign. He has made that clear. He will not step down voluntarily, because stepping down would be admitting that he was wrong, and he has never admitted that in his life. So the crisis will continue. The scandals will keep piling up. The legal walls will keep closing in. The calls for his removal will keep growing. And somewhere beneath it all, the infrastructure of American government will keep failing, because the infrastructure was built for a country that was not perpetually on fire. The tunnels beneath the Capitol were built decades ago. They were not designed for the stress of a presidency that tests every limit. The electrical systems were installed by people who assumed that the institutions they were building would be maintained by people who cared. The political system was designed by people who assumed that the people running it would care enough to keep it running. But here we are, in a moment where the president calls for executions and the Capitol fills with smoke. And the question is not whether the system can hold. The question is, what will be left when it finally breaks? The 2 Capitol police officers who were hospitalized are expected to recover. They will go back to work, probably sooner than they should, because that is what people do when they work in places that are perpetually under stress. They will stand their posts and do their jobs and pretend that everything is normal, even when it is not. And the lawmakers who demanded Trump's resignation will keep demanding it, even though they know it will not come. And the president will keep tweeting threats and calling for violence and testing the limits of what the country will tolerate. And somewhere in the underground tunnels beneath the Capitol, the electrical systems that sparked that fire will be repaired. They will be replaced. The smoke will clear. But the smoke in the political system is not clearing. It is thickening. It is filling every passage. It is making it harder to see, harder to breathe, harder to remember what normal ever looked like. The fire is out. The officers are recovering. The tunnels are open again. But the crisis that made that fire into something more than a maintenance failure is still burning. And until it is extinguished, until the man at the center of it is removed from power, until the institutions of American government are no longer under assault from the person who is supposed to lead them, the smoke will keep rising. And everyone who watches will have to decide whether they are going to run toward the fire or away from it. The 6 Democrats who made that video ran toward it. They knew Trump would come after them. They did it anyway. The Republicans who are starting to call for his resignation are running toward it too, maybe later than they should have. But finally, in the right direction. And the rest of us have to decide which side we are on. The side that fights the fire, or the side that watches it burn.